Welcome to Mike's Motorworx, and today we are building our jig for Project Fast Fish. You don't want to miss this. So the idea of the jig here is that, one, we're dealing with a unibody car. Those who are unfamiliar with classic Chryslers and Mopars need to understand that a e-body is a unibody vehicle. That means that the structure and the body panels work in conjunction to keep the car in a straight line while going down the road. This is much different than a frame on body or chassis or body on chassis design, which is still used in a lot of modern trucks, SUVs in some cases. Now, because we're going to be dealing with the panels and the structure of the vehicle, we don't want flex in the vehicle. Now, some make the argument, hey, you could just go ahead and ensure that you're braced on the floor with the proper jacks and so on and so forth, and go ahead and take those body panels off and those floor pans and that structure pan. And I decided that that would not be the best interest for me, because in the shop here, we got a nice flat surface. In the shop where I'll be doing a majority of the work, not so much. I don't want that body moving or flexing. So that necessitates going ahead and building this jig. Let me show you what it involves. So we purchased a whole lot of square tube, and the square tube is 2x2 with 1/8 wall. So our basic structure consists of 2x2 by 1/8 square tube, another beam up here, and then 2x2 here, 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 and there. All right, and then attaching it to help reduce the amount of flex, we'll be running a 1x1 by 1/8 square tube, up, down, in a zigzag pattern. We will make 2 of these, okay, and then attach them with 2x2 by 1/8 square tube, essentially making a box in certain areas. All right, and this box will be created at the front, midway, near the end, and at the back. And then on the bottom, for the bottom only, just on the bottom portion here, we will go ahead and run a single beam. That's so it doesn't flex back and forth this way, okay? Now, we will also run additional riggers to keep it from flexing at various key points. And then what we'll do is we will set this rig with casters and other leveling feet. We'll get those on there and set the vehicle on there, and then go ahead and make the riggers to go ahead and attach to the car. Now, in doing my homework for the various measurements and sizes and such that I need, I ran across this graphic, and basically what we found out is we have 4 key mounting points on each side. All right, key mounting point number 1 will be near the rear leaf shackle. Key mounting point number 2 will be where the frame comes down to the underside here, and essentially it's where you mount, or you would lift the vehicle from. The same point in the front here, and then the other key mounting point will be up towards the radiator support. If you were doing this on a flat 4 with jacks, you would actually do it right here underneath the center line for the wheel and the rear line for the wheel here. We're not going that route, we're building the rig. So there you go. Now, how wide does it need to be? I went ahead and took some measurements. The front is approximately 36 inches here at this point wide. So from here to here, 36 inches, give or take a little bit. All right, so that means, and you'll notice that the vehicle isn't completely square in these areas, so it kind of goes down. So that should give me more than enough room for the front. And then in the back, we're just going to keep the structure at 36 inches. We're not going to build it in an A pattern or looking like an A or an A frame. All right, what we're going to do is we're just going to keep it consistent through the entire width. That way, when we get to the back where it has that 49 inches from here to here, we could just simply build a support system in the back for it. Now, as far as the overall length that's needed, we went from the radiator support all the way to the rear cross beam there, the cross member, and we found that 14.5 foot would be sufficient there. So those are our base dimensions. So basically we're going to be building this rig at 14.5 feet wide, 36 inches wide. Sorry, 14.5 feet long, 36 inches wide. And then of course, tall-wise, we're only going to go 6 inches because I'm not the tallest dude in the world, and I want to make sure that I can get in the vehicle as needed and still work on the vehicle and key points while standing up and without having to get up on ladders and so on and so forth. So there we go. That's the plan. All right, so a little hindsight 2020. If we were to do this project again, we would probably want to pre-cut all of our materials in advance because this is the low point. Now we are using a bandsaw that is going to take some time, but because of the material, we're finding that we're having to do a little bit of waiting, especially when dealing for the bandsaw here. Would using a metal saw been better? Maybe. You know, that's subjective, but hey, it's all good. That's what we got, and that's what we're doing. We're building what we have. Now, because the floor is the flattest surface we have, and we're pretty good on the floor in here. It's not perfect, but it is the flattest surface we can use. That is serving as our base for our first side bar construction. And as you can see, what we're doing is we're adding the crossbars there. Those are only 6 inches in length. Again, I'm doing 6 inches, not 10, because I'm a shorter dude, and I want to make sure that I can get around the car as needed without using a ladder. And all we've done at this point is simply cut those, and then we've tacked these into place. Nothing more than a simple standard tack weld for each one. All right, and what we're going to do is after the last one is cut, we're going to get that one tacked into place, put the final length on, and finish that bar. Then we'll move off the floor, and we should be able to finish the structure at that point. Again, we're doing all tack welds to begin with, and then we will run our full beads as needed, where needed. Now that we have the first side done, it's time to go ahead and look at the second side. And the second side should be a little easier because we have the first side done. We could use that as our base template. And of course, we have this on the sawhorses now. That allows us to work on a little bit taller surface as opposed to working on the ground. Now, what we've done is we've only welded in the initial insides and the inside portions. And of course, they're not perfect, but hey, they at least got us started. And we're able to go ahead and build the rest from here. And so now with it in its higher position, it should be a little bit smoother. Only a few more cuts for the 6-inch pieces here. And again, if you're wondering about the measurements, we are for an E-body at 14.5 feet long. And then of course our insides are 6 inches. You can go up to 10 inches or 12 inches if you choose. I chose 6 because of my height. And then of course we'll be at a total of 36 wide when we get done with the basic box cage structure. All right, let me go ahead and get the rest of this in, and I'll go ahead and put this in a time lapse. Now with the outside welds done, we are ready to go ahead and move this top piece to the side so we can get the other pieces welded in on the other side. And of course this will serve as our outside edge. And this guy admits, you know, some of those welds in the middle not so good, but I think we did all right on the flatter welds. So
this is a good opportunity to work on my welding skills before we really start getting into the sheet metal. And of course I understand that, hey, working on 1/8 steel is a little bit different than sheet metal, but it's a good opportunity to hone in on those skills because we got some ugliness and we got some prettiness.
Here are where things currently stand on our jig. Now we're looking at the bottom of the jig here, and you can see that most of the primary welding is taken care of. This is the top side of the jig, and as we're looking across and looking down the main beams here, you can see that we have all sides welded up, and so we're good to go there. Now what we're doing today is we are going through and mounting the plates for our casters. We got the bigger welder out. My little 135 ain't going to do my little 150. And so we got the big 240 welder out. And what we're doing is we're welding this 1/4 inch plate that has been pre-drilled, and we're using those to hold the casters in place. And this will give us mobility. And after that, we'll use feet to keep it steady once we're on the flat surface. So our objectives for today are to get the casters on, get the feet ready, and maybe run our cross beams that'll be running from one side zigzagged to the other. All right, now that we have our plates welded into place, we are ready to mount our casters. So a little bit more on that here shortly. Now, what we did here is we used 1/4 inch plate, right? Welded them together on the edges, pre-drilled the holes for the casters, and then welded the plates on at the 4 corners here. Again, the idea being is that we don't want these to move, you know, especially with the rougher surface that I'll have in the shop where I'll be working on the project at. And we're going to mount our casters here shortly. The casters themselves measure 6 inches from top to bottom, and of course we have the extra 1/4 to compensate with the 1/4 inch plates. And what we're going to do next is get the casters mounted and then do our final measurements to see how we're going to do our mounting with our stabilization feet. The idea being is since I'll be on an uneven surface, I'll be able to use the stabilization feet to stable and level out the jig to ensure that the rest of the car remains level as well. These were toolbox casters, and they had a pretty good load rating on them, so that's why I went ahead and picked them up. Of course, they're pretty nice. You know, they got the greasable fittings everywhere where you need them at your main turnbuckles or what have you, and on the bearings down here, which is kind of cool. So as you saw in the initial drawings, there will be 6 stabilizer feet to kind of keep the jig from moving side to side, front to back, so on and so forth, right? Because we can't rely on just the 4 points of the casters because of the uneven surface is what we're dealing with. So what we did is we went ahead and welded a nut underneath here, and then what we'll do is we'll simply weld this plate into place, allowing the stabilizer feet to go straight down in there, all right? And then those stabilizer feet will be mounted in the centers and in the 4 far corners. Yeah, don't look at those welds, that's hideous, all right? That was not my best welding job. Again, I'm still learning here. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and weld in the stabilizer feet. I showed those to you earlier, and these will get welded in to these spots here. I'll take and hit all 4 corners. And like I said before, we're gonna hit spot 1. Here's the caster. We're going to hit the next spot down here. All right, that's the middle point or the midpoint. And then we're going to get a caster here. And then here at the end point, we have another set. All right, again, yeah, those are not the best welds at all. Still learning how to get that taken care of and figured out right. It's still a learning process and a learning curve. Hopefully by the time I get to sheet metal, we'll be a whole lot better on those welding skills. But overall, we're looking really good. Side to side at the top measurement, so you're looking at diagonal, we were only 1/16 off. Not perfect because we didn't have a jig to build our jig in,
But you know, hey, for building on concrete and what have you, and using the tools and using what we have, I think it's good enough, and it'll definitely serve its purpose to keep that car from moving. And we'll show you that process also of getting the car on there a little bit later on.